You don't leave your wife a goodbye letter on your anniversary unless something's been dying for a long time. You don't pack your suitcase between her yoga mat and the kids' cereal boxes unless the house stopped feeling like home months ago. And you sure don't write, "Thank you for teaching me that silence can be louder than betrayal," unless you spend a year being quiet just to survive. But back then, in that ballroom, I was still trying. It was a winter corporate event in downtown Chicago, a December evening dressed up like it mattered. Gold name tags, champagne and long flutes, the kind of soft jazz that sounds like it was recorded underwater. My tie was tight. My hands were loose on a scotch glass. Jessica stood at the far end of the stage, my wife of 12 years, mother of our 2 kids, and the type of woman who could make you feel like you were the only one in a room, even if she barely looked at you. She was there as a guest panelist for the Spouses of Executives Q&A, a charming little segment, meant to feel intimate and harmless. Someone in the crowd asked about connection, how to keep love strong in a digital world. Jessica smiled, tucked a curl behind her ear, and then she said it, just loud enough, just slow enough, to hit everyone at once. Sometimes virtual connections feel more real than the person you married. There was a pause, sharp, brief, electric. The audience gave a soft, confused laugh. The moderator moved on, but I couldn't. I stared at her. She didn't look back. My scotch glass met the tablecloth gently. I stood, smoothed the front of my jacket. No outburst, no scene. Just the slow walk of a man who realized, too late, that his marriage had started unraveling while he was still tucking in the kids and fixing leaky faucets. Outside, the air hit me like truth, cold and unforgiving. Snow was falling hard by the time I reached the curb. Chicago lights blurred behind the flakes, and I stood there, coatless, hands in pockets, watching people in rented tuxes and designer boots hurry past like nothing had changed. But something had, because that wasn't a joke, not a metaphor, not a thought experiment. It was confession, veiled in charm, spoken on a mic like she was testing the weight of her truth in front of strangers. And it landed. Right then, I knew. She was already somewhere else, with someone else, even if she hadn't admitted it to herself yet. And me? I didn't feel rage. Not yet. That would come later. What I felt was something quieter, like the moment you realize your house has gone cold, not because the heat's out, but because the warmth just doesn't reach you anymore. The next morning, our kitchen smelled like orange zest and toasted sourdough. The coffee dripped its usual rhythm. Sunlight spilled across the tile floor like nothing had happened. Jessica moved through it all effortlessly barefoot, humming some melody she probably picked up from a meditation app. She wore one of my old college sweatshirts, the cuffs frayed from years of laundry cycles. It should have looked like love, but on her, it felt like costume. She poured coffee into 2 mugs and handed one to me like she always did. Then, just as easily as she'd said it the night before, she leaned against the counter and chuckled. By the way, she said, I hope that comment didn't come off weird last night. Someone DM'd me asking if we were getting divorced. I didn't flinch, just took a slow sip and let the heat anchor me. Jessica rolled her eyes, smiling like it was all one big misunderstanding. It was just a philosophical thing. You know, about connection in the modern world. I nodded once. Not too slow, not too fast. That's what I figured, I said calmly, setting the mug down with care. People love to take things out of context. She looked relieved, almost amused. Exactly. And that was it. No apology. No curiosity about how it might have sounded to her husband sitting 10 feet away. She was already moving on, talking about how the kids needed winter boots and whether we should try a new grocery delivery app. I opened my laptop. Inbox full. Quarterly report due. A meeting in 20 minutes. The world didn't stop just because something inside me did. I tapped my keyboard. I scanning numbers, graphs, lines of communication. Jessica walked behind me, trailing her usual scent, lavender and the faintest trace of vanilla shampoo. She kissed the top of my head and said, "You good?" I gave the same answer I'd been giving since our 2nd year of marriage, when stress and silence started replacing surprise and softness. Yeah, all good. But I wasn't. Not really. Because something in me had shifted the moment she said that line on stage. Not shattered, just tilted. And now I couldn't unsee the angle. She'd given me an answer this morning, one wrapped in charm and plausible deniability. But I'd heard what she said. I saw how her eyes never looked for mine in that room. And I felt, deep in the part of myself that still believed in vows, that we'd both stepped onto opposite ends of a very thin wire. She thought we were fine, that I was fine, And I let her believe that. Because when someone starts rewriting the story you thought you were living, sometimes the smartest move is to stay quiet and pay attention. It started with a simple sync issue. I connected our shared calendar app to my desktop to track the kids' school schedule, chess club, dental appointments, a birthday party at Sky Zone. But that morning, something odd blinked in the corner of my screen. A notification from her cloud drive. A permissions update I hadn't made. Curious, I clicked. Not because I didn't trust her, but because something in me had gone quiet since that night at the event, and silence makes you notice things you used to ignore. A folder opened, then another, then a saved browser session she hadn't logged out of. At first, it was nothing flight searches, a few bookmarked poems, a Pinterest board called Alone in Stillness. I almost closed the window, but then I saw it, a string of messages logged through a chat app one didn't recognize. They weren't dated recently, weeks ago, maybe months, but the tone was unmistakable. Just hearing your voice steadies me, she wrote in one. Do you ever feel like you're already married to the wrong version of your life? And the one that stopped me cold. I feel more seen in our messages than I do in my own kitchen. I scrolled, page after page of late-night notes. Poetic, raw, not graphic, not sexual, but painfully intimate. They talked about books, dreams, childhood regrets. About us, her and me, as if I were a city she used to visit but no longer lived in. His name was Aaron, San Francisco, a freelance writer, judging by his bio on a link she'd shared with him. Their chats were full of timestamps, time zones, little jokes about how the Pacific light was always softer than Chicago's harsh blue. I sat there, my hand still on the mouse, heart not racing, just sinking. She never mentioned him. Not once. Not during dinner. Not when we watched reruns with the kids. Not even when she crawled into bed beside me with that distant expression she passed off as tiredness. And yet, there it was. A whole second life. One where she wasn't Jessica, my wife and partner in grocery lists and bedtime routines. She was someone else. Someone freer. Someone reaching. It wasn't physical. Not yet. But in some ways, that made it worse. Because this wasn't lust. It was longing. A slow, deliberate tethering of emotion to a stranger whose words apparently soothed her in ways mine no longer could. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I didn't shout. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. What would you do if the person you trusted most had already emotionally left you, but still made your coffee in the morning? Would you confront them? Would you scream? Or would you do what I did? Open a blank document. Start typing everything you've seen, everything you feel, and begin to build your escape? That day, I started documenting. Not because I wanted to catch her, but because I needed to understand when it all changed. And I needed proof, if not for anyone else, then at least for myself, that I hadn't just imagined it. I never asked her about Aaron. Not because I was afraid of the truth. By then, the truth had already found me, but because I didn't want to give her the gift of my anger. That would have made it real for both of us. A scene. A confrontation. Something she could spin later into, well, we fought a lot during that time. No, I wanted calm, control, a quiet path out. So I booked a therapy session. I told Jessica it was a work lunch. She didn't blink. She never asked. The office was on the third floor of a brick building tucked between a yoga studio and a juice bar. Inside, it smelled like peppermint tea and worn carpet. Dr. Green was in her late 50s, with kind eyes and shoes that squeaked when she walked. She didn't offer me a clipboard, just a chair. Why are you here, Daniel? She asked. I stared out the window for a moment before answering. My wife's having an emotional affair, I said, voice level. She thinks I don't know, but I do. She nodded slowly, folding her hands. Do you want to save the marriage? I thought about that. I really did. Thought about the kids' artwork on the fridge, and the way Jessica still hummed while folding laundry, and how we used to fall asleep tangled like roots. No, I said, quietly. I want to leave without setting fire to the house. So that's what I started planning. Each night after the kids went to bed, I'd log notes into a password-protected file. Timestamped screenshots. Excerpts from messages. A journal of behavior shifts. Not to use against her, but to make sure I wasn't rewriting history later when doubt crept in. I started pulling back, gently, almost invisibly. I declined extra work trips. I stopped reaching for her in bed. I laughed less, asked fewer questions, gave her space she didn't realize she already owned. Jessica didn't notice, not really. She was distracted, caught up in her phone, her client calls, The inner life she thought she was managing so carefully. One afternoon, she came home early, caught me in the kitchen with a bowl of pasta and my headphones on. I paused my audio journal and looked up. "You're quiet these days," she said, half smiling. "Just tired," I replied. She kissed my cheek. "I'm glad you're not the jealous type." I smiled back. But inside, something steady and final was beginning to take shape. Because when you know it's over, and you decide not to rage, not to beg, you begin to think in terms of exits. Not revenge. Not drama. Just peace. I didn't want to destroy her. I just didn't want to be destroyed staying with her. It started with the way she stared at my phone. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But then I caught her, 3 mornings in a row, glancing at my screen just a little too long when it lit up on the counter. Harmless notifications. Calendar pings. A weather alert. Nothing that said, "He's hiding something." But Jessica was watching. I wasn't cheating. I wasn't even flirting. But her guilt had built a mirror. And now, every ounce of distance I gave her reflected something back she didn't want to see. She started asking subtle questions. At dinner, "Do you ever talk to that woman from your team? What's her name? Natalie? Is your phone always on silent now? Why don't you leave your laptop open like you used to?" They came wrapped in soft tones, laced with casualness, but I knew exactly what they were. She thought I was doing what she was doing. And maybe that was fair, because I wasn't sharing my days with her anymore. Not really. Not the way I used to. I still made dinner, folded laundry, kissed her cheek goodnight. But the warmth behind it had cooled. I was giving her the shape of our marriage without the spirit, and it terrified her. One night she came into the living room wearing that old blue hoodie she knew I liked. She curled up next to me on the couch, pressed her face against my shoulder, and asked, "You still love me, right?" I turned the TV volume down a notch. Looked at her. "What makes you ask that?" She laughed, tight, brittle. "I don't know. You've been kind of elsewhere lately." I didn't lie. I didn't reassure her either. "I'm here now," I said quietly. It wasn't a comfort. Not really. Because the thing about emotional affairs, once you've had one, is that you begin to assume everyone else is capable of the same. Even the person you once believed was too steady, too boring, too devoted to stray. She thought I was hiding something. And in a way, I was. I was hiding the fact that I had nothing left to fight for. But I hadn't left. Not yet. And that confused her more than anything. So she got sharper. More affectionate. Then more suspicious. One day, she'd text me a heart emoji out of nowhere. The next, she'd ask if I was sure I was working late. She even checked the car mileage once. I saw the odometer reset. I said nothing. Because watching her paranoia rise was like watching a magician fall for their own trick. She had cast the first shadow, and now she was stumbling through the dark, trying to find me in it. It was a Thursday night when it happened. Not dramatic. Not stormy. Just one of those quiet evenings when the house settles into itself, kids brushing teeth upstairs, dishwasher humming, the scent of soap and wood polish hanging faintly in the air. I was in the den, lights dimmed, speaking softly into my phone. My voice low, even. Familiar. Jessica came around the corner holding a basket of clean laundry, her sock-covered footsteps barely audible. I didn't see her right away. Not until she paused in the doorway, frozen. I kept talking. "No. I've been sleeping fine. Just trying to stay grounded. I don't feel angry, just untethered." Jessica stood there like a statue, the basket still balanced in her arms. I saw her too late. Her eyes locked onto mine, then shifted to the phone. Her face didn't change right away, but something behind her gaze tightened, like elastic stretched to the edge of snapping. I finished my sentence. "Yes, next Tuesday at the same time. That works." Then I ended the call. Silence. She stepped inside, one socked foot after the other, slow and deliberate. She set the laundry basket down with this calm precision that made me realize she had rehearsed this moment in her head 1,000 times. "That was her," she said softly. I looked at her. "Who?" Jessica blinked like I was mocking her. "Lena, or whoever she is." Her voice wasn't raised. That's what surprised me. "No," I said. "That was Dr. Abrams, my therapist." Her mouth opened slightly, as if she'd expected me to lie, to scramble. But I didn't. She blinked again, slower this time. "Your therapist?" I nodded. "Yeah. I've been seeing her for about a month now." More silence. I watched something shift behind her eyes. Her shoulders dropped. Not with relief, but with recognition. Like she'd been caught spying on someone who wasn't guilty after all. And maybe that was worse. She sat down on the edge of the armchair, her knees pulled together, hands clasped like she was waiting for a verdict. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, voice thin. I took a breath, held it, let it out slow. "Because I didn't want to make you responsible for how I feel. Not anymore." Her lips parted. She didn't speak. I sat down across from her, elbows on my knees. "I didn't cheat on you, Jessica," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "But you did on me. You just used words instead of bodies." She didn't deny it, didn't even flinch. Instead, she looked down at her hands like they might have the answer scribbled across her skin. "I didn't mean for it to be anything," she whispered. "It started as talking, escaping. I didn't think it would go that far." I stayed still. She went on, like a slow leak finally giving way. "It wasn't about him. Not really. It was about how he made me feel. Hurt. Interesting. Like I still mattered." I nodded. "Once. I get that," I said. "I really do." Tears welled in her eyes, but she wiped them away fast, almost embarrassed. "I never wanted to hurt you." "You didn't," I said. "Not at first." She looked up at me, startled. "What do you mean?" I held her gaze, steady and calm. "You hurt me when you stopped trying." For a moment, all I could hear was the gentle churn of the dishwasher behind us. No yelling, no accusations. Just two people sitting in the ruins of something they used to protect. I stood. "Good night, Jess." I left her there, in the quiet, her hands still clasped, her eyes still searching. But the thing is, I wasn't lost. Not anymore. Saturday afternoon. Rain on the windows. One of those gray Midwest days that makes everything feel like it's underwater. The kids were at Jessica's parents' house, some last-minute sleepover she'd arranged, maybe to give herself space, maybe to give us time. I hadn't asked. I was in the kitchen making tea. Mint, because coffee felt too harsh. The kettle squealed soft steam, and I poured the water into 2 mugs before I realized I wasn't expecting company. But she came in anyway. Jessica stood in the doorway like she didn't quite know how to step forward. Her hair was damp, pulled into a careless knot. No makeup. No distractions. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded toward the chairs. "Always." She sat across from me and didn't touch the tea. There was a long pause, so long I thought she'd changed her mind. But then she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I need to tell you the truth." I didn't move. She took a breath so deep it shook her shoulders. "It was more than talking," she said. "Not physical, not in the way you think. But it was real. I told him things I hadn't told you in years. I looked forward to his messages more than anything. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. I was lonely, Daniel. And I was ashamed of that loneliness, because I knew you were right there, trying." I didn't interrupt. I felt invisible, she went on, like a ghost in my own life. "The kids needed me. Work needed me. You were always steady, always good. But somehow I started fading, and when I talked to him, I felt like I had a voice again. It made me feel alive. And that scared me, because I knew it meant something was broken here. Still, I didn't speak." She rubbed her fingers together, nervous, compulsive. "I deleted everything. A week ago. Every message. Every backup. I told him not to contact me again. I blocked him. You can check if you want." "I believe you," I said. That startled her. "You do?" "Yes," I said, "because I don't think you're lying anymore. And honestly, I don't think you want to be." Jessica's voice cracked. "I don't. I just want my family. I want you. I don't know how to fix what I broke, but I swear I'll try. Just tell me what to do." I stared into my tea for a long time. Then I said, "Nothing, Jess. Just let me breathe. Let me feel what I feel." She reached for my hand. I let her. But inside, it wasn't hope I felt. It was grief. Because even though I sat there, steady as ever, part of me had already begun letting go. And the strange part? It didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. We tried. We went to couples therapy like she asked. Every Wednesday at 6 p.m. sharp. Sat side by side on the same oatmeal-colored couch, answering the therapist's questions with awkward politeness. Like coworkers stuck on a project neither of us had asked for. She leaned in. She wanted progress. She did the work, read the books, jotted notes in a journal I saw her hiding under her pillow. She made my favorite meals again. Texted during the day, "Thinking of you. Hope your meeting went well." She reached for my hand at red lights. Laughed a little too hard at my quiet jokes. But none of it reached me. Not in the way it used to. That's what happens when something breaks inside you quietly, without screaming or slamming doors. It doesn't explode. It drains. And then, one day, you look at the person you promised forever to, and feel nothing but a soft ache of memory. I wasn't angry anymore. just numb. During therapy, I answered honestly but sparingly. I felt abandoned, I told the therapist once. Jessica turned to me, eyes glassy. Why didn't you say anything sooner? I looked at her, calm, because by the time I understood it, I didn't trust it would matter. At home, we still moved through the same rhythms, brushed our teeth in the same mirror, passed each other in the hallway, laughed with the kids at the dinner table. We were a portrait of recovery on the surface. But the love? It had gone somewhere I couldn't seem to follow. One evening, after the kids went to bed, Jessica sat across from me on the couch and said, "Do you think we're getting better?" I looked at her, really looked, and saw the effort, the fatigue behind her hope. "I think we're trying," I said. She nodded, a small, brave smile pulling at her lips. But I didn't smile back, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I didn't want to lie. She kissed me goodnight that evening. A soft, familiar kiss, the kind we used to give each other without thinking. I stood there afterward in the hallway, staring at the dark of our bedroom door, and for the first time since we began this whole attempt at repair, I knew exactly what I was waiting for. Not healing, closure. The 6th session was the last one. We sat in the same overwarmed office, sunlight bleeding through the blinds and broken slats. Jessica wore a cream sweater that used to be mine. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem like she was holding on to something delicate and fraying. The therapist asked us to speak honestly, no filters, no pretending. Jessica went first. "I know I made a mistake," she said, voice clear but trembling. "I know I hurt you, but I believe people can come back from things. I believe love can survive if you fight for it." She reached out, touched my knee, tentative. "I'm still fighting, Daniel. Even if it doesn't look perfect. Even if I get it wrong." I nodded slowly. Let her finish. And then I said what I had carried for weeks. "You're not a bad person, Jess." Her eyes blinked, fast, waiting for the rest. "But I'm no longer your person." Her hand retracted slowly, as if the heat had gone out of the air between us. She swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" she asked, even though I could tell she already knew. "It means I won't punish you," I said. "It means I still respect you. It means I'll always care. But whatever we were, it's gone." Her mouth opened, then closed. Tears welled up, silent, unforced. She looked like she'd just been told someone she loved had died in their sleep. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. I nodded, steady. "I think you already did." The moment it felt easier to type your heart into a screen than to speak it to me. The room went quiet. Not tense, just still, like the dust had stopped floating. The therapist gave us both a moment. Jessica wiped under her eyes, mascara smudging lightly onto her knuckle. "Can we still keep trying?" she asked. "For the kids. I'll always be their father," I said. "That doesn't change. And us." I didn't look away. "We'll finish this with grace. That's all I can promise." She nodded, slow, stunned. The way people do when they hear the final verdict and realize there's no appeal. That night, we ate dinner with the kids. Chicken nuggets, broccoli they didn't touch, homework packets half done. Jessica smiled like everything was normal, but her eyes were far away. And mine? Mine were already planning the quietest goodbye a man could give. Because this wasn't a war anymore. It was a burial. And I wasn't angry. I was free. The 6th therapy session was the last one. We didn't say it out loud, but we both knew. There was no appointment scheduled. No, see you next week. Just silence at the end, and a soft thank you from Jessica that didn't quite reach the therapist's eyes. The ride home was quiet. Not tense, just quiet. Like the static left behind when a long conversation finally runs out of air. She stared out the window, forehead resting against the glass, watching a father push a stroller through the slush-covered sidewalk. I kept my eyes on the road, the wipers carving steady lines through gray drizzle. When we got home, she went upstairs without a word. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, jacket still on, watching the rain smear against the glass, one drop trailing another like it didn't want to fall alone. We didn't speak again that night. She folded laundry on the couch like she had something to prove. I pretended to answer emails. The kids stayed busy with their tablet games, unaware of the tectonic shift happening behind their bedroom walls. I didn't sleep well. She must not have, either. I heard her turning in bed, the rustle of sheets, the occasional sigh that she thought was quiet enough not to carry. The next morning, I got up before the alarm, made coffee in the half-dark, sat on the back porch while the sky was still figuring out if it would rain or snow. The cold cut through my sweater, but I didn't care. I needed it, something that made me feel alive, even if it stung. Jessica came downstairs later. She moved carefully, like a woman who'd woken up inside a house she no longer recognized. Her hair was tied back in a lazy bun. No makeup. No mask. She saw me at the table, hesitated, then poured herself a cup of coffee and sat across from me. I waited a few seconds, then said it. I want us to separate. Her fingers froze around the mug. Not a gasp. Not a slam door. Just stillness. Like something inside her had stopped breathing. She didn't look up at first. Just sat there, staring into the swirl of cream in her coffee. You've already decided, she said. I nodded. I decided when I realized I hadn't missed you in weeks. Her eyes flicked up then. Red-rimmed, but dry. We could still keep trying. We have tried, Jess. 4 months now. And I think some part of me hoped that if we just kept showing up, the love would come back. But it hasn't. She looked like she wanted to argue. I saw it, her shoulders tensing like she might say something that could rewind the tape. But it didn't come. Was it him? She asked quietly. Was it Aaron that ruined us? No, I said. You didn't ruin us with him. You just made it clear you'd already left before I even noticed the door was open. Jessica pulled her legs up onto the chair, wrapping her arms around them like a child trying to disappear into herself. You said I'm not a bad person, she whispered. You're not, I said, gently. But I'm not your person anymore. She pressed her face into her knees. I waited, giving her time. Eventually, she sat back up, voice steadier. What do we tell the kids? The truth. That we're going to live apart. That we love them. That none of this is their fault. And that we're still a team when it comes to them. She nodded, but it was the kind of nod people give when they know the ground beneath them is about to give way. Later that afternoon, she came into my office while I was clearing old emails. She leaned on the doorframe, small and unsure. If I asked you to stay, would you? I paused. No, I said. Because staying now would mean pretending. And I can't teach our kids that pretending is what love looks like. Her eyes welled up, and for a second, she looked 20 again, soft, unsure, breakable. Do you love me? She asked. I care about you, I said. And I always will. But I don't love you the way I used to. Not the way either of us deserves. She stepped back into the hall, one hand covering her mouth. I thought she might break down, but she didn't. She just walked away. That night, I took the guest room. She didn't ask why. And the space between our doors felt like a quiet agreement neither of us had the strength to speak. We weren't at war, but we weren't married anymore either. And somehow, that felt like progress. Our anniversary fell on a Sunday. No cards, no reservations. Just an unusually warm January sun melting the frost off our back deck. The kids were at my sister's for the weekend. Jessica had arranged it days earlier, thinking maybe we'd spend the day reconnecting. I let her believe that. I didn't have the heart to correct her. Not yet. The truth was, I'd already packed 3 suitcases, 1 for me, 2 for the kids, tucked neatly in the trunk of my car the night before while she was brushing her teeth upstairs. I left their favorite blankets on top, the blue one with rockets for Max and Ella's faded unicorn fleece, frayed along the edge where she always chewed the corner when she was nervous. Inside the house, everything looked normal. Too normal. The dining table was clean, her laptop charger coiled just the way she liked it, a lavender candle burning low near the sink. She came downstairs just after 9. Her hair was curled. Light, hopeful effort. She wore the necklace I gave her on our 5th anniversary, the one with the tiny gold disc engraved with the kids' initials. She smiled when she saw me standing in the kitchen. I thought maybe we could walk around the lake later, she said gently. Like we used to. I nodded once. Maybe. She didn't notice the tightness in my voice. Or maybe she did. Maybe she was pretending too. At 10:15, while she was folding laundry in the den, I placed the envelope on the hallway table. Just a single sheet inside. Handwritten. No drama. No accusations. Just this. Jessica, I used to think betrayal had to be loud. A scream. A door slam. A name you never say again. But now I understand. Silence can be worse. Silence can rot a marriage faster than anything. You stopped speaking to me long before you spoke to him. You started sharing your mind with someone else while still setting plates at my side of the table. And I let it happen. I stayed quiet. I tried to be calm, reasonable, understanding. I kept thinking you'd come back. But I realized now, so did you. And neither of us ever did. So I'm going. Not in anger. Not in revenge. Just with clarity. The kids are with me. They'll be safe, loved, steady like I've always tried to be. Thank you for teaching me that silence can be louder than betrayal. Daniel, I didn't leave a return address. Just my name at the bottom, plain and clean. When I walked out the door, I didn't look back. I got into the car, turned the key, and pulled away. The house looked the same in the rearview mirror. Perfect siding. Quiet porch. The window she always opened when baking banana bread still cracked half an inch. Half a mile down the road, Ella asked, "Is Mommy coming?" I looked at her in the mirror. Not today. Max was quiet. Then he asked, "Is she sad?" I gripped the wheel a little tighter. "Maybe," I said. But sometimes sadness helps people grow. We drove north. Just a weekend rental by the lake, for now. A place to breathe. That night, after they fell asleep curled on either side of me, I stepped outside. Stood on the small porch, wrapped in an old flannel, watching the frozen shoreline shimmer under the moonlight. I felt something loosen inside me. Something old and tangled, finally letting go. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't escape. It was release. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't hurt. It felt like peace. If this story hit something in you, drop a comment. Have you ever lived through a quiet betrayal? Let's talk. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. There's more to come.